What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Spoiler review. And yeah, this episode was a huge surprise to me because I had no idea what the premise was. I didn't hear about it, anywhere. I knew about Captain Carter. I knew about T'Challa Star-Lord. I knew about Party Thor, Marvel Zombies. But I heard nothing about the premise of this episode because I've been trying to avoid the trailers and, the little previews on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And I think a big part of it is also because there's no merch representation for this episode, largely because, all the characters are pretty much the same. They don't look different. They don't really act different. But I'm sure they're gonna make a pop figure out of evil Hank Pym. Definitely. So yeah, this episode is a little bit more similar to the first episode in that it's very rushy. The first episode was a very brief rundown of Captain America, the first Avenger. This episode is very similar, except it's multiply that by 3. This movie kind of covers / touches upon Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor 1. And it was very interesting and fun revisiting this period of the MCU because this is when they were still getting their stuff together, right? This is back when a lot of people still thought that these movies were individual movies, your Spider-Mans and X-Men's, where it's just they're never gonna connect to other things, even though it was well established in, I believe, Iron Man 1, it should have been Iron Man 1, that, these movies were indeed connected. In fact, this is actually when I started getting into the MCU, because full transparency, I didn't get into the MCU during Iron Man 1. My first MCU movie was, I believe, the first Thor movie. I watched that in theaters, and then that's when I caught up. So I didn't have much catching up to do, poor souls who have to watch, almost 30 movies and, 4+ Disney Plus shows at this point. So yeah, because we had the privilege of going back to these really early times of the MCU, I just wanted to note some things that I picked up on throughout the episode. So I think when Thor's on the table, in this episode he's dead, but in Infinity War he's just unconscious or in a coma, sort of. I think those two scenes are connected. I think that's a throwback to the Infinity War scene, because in Infinity War you have the Guardians complimenting Thor while he's laying on a table, and then in this episode you have Thor laying on a table again, and Coulson's just looking at him. He's he smells like blossoms or whatever like that. Second thing is, during the parts of The Incredible Hulk, we have Mark Ruffalo voicing Bruce Banner. Mark Ruffalo wasn't Bruce Banner back then, so it's really interesting and a little bit more cohesive that we have Mark Ruffalo voicing Bruce Banner during this time period. So, it's not like he was just thrown in during Avengers like he was in the actual movies. And the final thing I noticed was that Loki, he didn't turn blue when he was using the casket of the Ancient Winters. So maybe another difference is that he's not a frost giant, or maybe they just forgot. I doubt they would forget something like that. But yeah, or maybe because he doesn't know, it doesn't, forget it. But those are just some things I picked up on, and I started taking notes on that. So a big draw of this episode is the mystery aspect of it. I have Black Widow here. I would say, nah, she's not the main character. It's mainly Nick Fury who's the main character of this episode, but she's in it a lot. It's Nick Fury and Black Widow's episode. It's them trying to figure out who is killing all these potential Avengers, because they're not Avengers yet. And I think that's the greatest strength of this episode is, who is capable, who in the MCU at this point is capable of killing all these major Avengers, including Thor and the Incredible Hulk, someone that's supposed to be unkillable. So we come to the revelation that Hank Pym as Ant-Man is the one killing all of these potential Avengers, which is kind of ironic to me because I believe Hank Pym as Ant-Man is the one who assembles the Avengers in the comics, but that's totally unrelated. What you find out is that Hope, Hank's daughter, died on a mission, and Hank basically is just grieving, and he puts the Ant-Man suit back on because, remember, the reason he stopped wearing it in the first place is because it was breaking him down, like, mentally, you know? It was driving him crazy, essentially. So a cool alternate title for this episode, I think, would have been, what if Hank Pym continued to be Ant-Man, or something like that. I know, of course, that would ruin the mystery, blah, 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 whatever. Oh, and the way that this man kills the Hulk is pretty brutal. He pierces Bruce Banner's skin, you know, while he's Bruce Banner, and then Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk, and Hank Pym straight up just enlarges the Hulk's heart, and the Hulk freaking blows up. So that's pretty metal, and I can basically buy it as a viable way to kill the Hulk. You know, it was pretty cartoony and a little weird. Definitely, you know, if this happened in the live action MCU, it'd be really weird, unbelievable, and kind of a really weird way to kill off the Hulk. And but I guess that's another strength of the What If episodes, because they're animated and you get to do more outlandish things, as I've said in the past 2 episodes. So yeah, Nick Fury and Hank Pym fight. And this is probably my favorite fight in the episode, because like Nick Fury is just like finessing him. He's like slapping Hank Pym around. He's dodging him. He's just reading his movements and stuff. He's doing flips and everything. So it's really cool to see Nick Fury do that. But he essentially pulls a Luke Skywalker on Hank Pym, because for one, it's actually Loki disguised as Nick Fury. But then, you know, Loki's using his projections, and that's why like he was dodging around, not to give the illusion, or to give off the illusion that he was actually there and stuff. So long story short, Hank Pym loses, Loki rules the world, and then we move on to the final part of the episode, and that's where Nick Fury is forced to recruit more Avengers, because Loki is now ruling the world and there's no current Avengers to protect the world. And you realize that Captain America is still frozen in ice. They haven't thawed him out yet, so he's going to become one of the first Avengers alongside Captain Marvel, who Nick Fury calls down because now he has the pager. And yeah, I wouldn't actually mind seeing Captain Marvel in the What If episodes more often, or just in animation more often, because I feel like her powers really lend to, you know, the whole animation style. They could really show off the proper extent to how strong she can be. Overall, I'm pretty mixed on this episode. I feel like it has a very strong premise, but weak execution, because I feel like the depths of these characters and these Avengers should be given more weight than what we were given in the episode, basically. And definitely, if you're a casual MCU fan, or if you're less than casual and you just decide to go into this episode, you're gonna be very confused, and you're not gonna be as engaged in it as you could be, basically, you know, because it's so messy with jumping around with the different movies. You know, if you're not the type of person to be like, the Tesseract was here, and was held by this person at this point in time, like, if you weren't the person to, like, you know, notice that 3 Infinity Stones were in New York in 2012 before Black Widow noticed it in Endgame while you were watching Endgame or something, then, you know, you're gonna have a bit of a hard time. Like, okay, I'm using hyperbole, but that's what I'm just saying. It really relies on your knowledge of the MCU. That's the premise of What If in a nutshell, basically. So, you know, that could be one of its strengths also. But, you know, I think more concretely, what's one of the strengths of What If is that we get to revisit these movies that aren't really looked upon anymore. Because I feel like out of most Marvel movies, like, okay, a good amount of them are kind of forgotten sometimes, but definitely Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and yeah, you could say the first Thor movie, those are all pretty, like, negligible in people's minds. Like, you know, in the grand scheme of the MCU, you don't think about those movies immediately. And the fact that we have them all wrapped up in this little bundle of an episode just to revisit them, basically, you know, that's a nice thing to have. And I think that's another one of the strengths of this episode, aside from the whole mystery aspect. So, overall, would I rewatch this episode? I would say no. Sorry, there's just nothing holding me on to this episode. You know, like I said, the biggest strength of this episode, I feel like, was the mystery, just trying to figure out who could kill all of these Avengers. And now that I know it's Hank Pym, you know, I don't feel like I'm compelled enough to rewatch the episode, to revisit it, essentially. You know, because episode 2, you know, a big strength of that is just seeing all of the different differences and all the different Easter eggs and all the small little things that you can pinpoint and point out. But, you know, especially with this episode specifically, this episode takes place on Earth. The whole thing takes place on Earth. And then you can look back on episode 1, the Captain Carter episode. Like I said in my review for that first episode, a big thing that would have me rewatch that episode is the action, because I feel like Captain Carter uses her powers in such a fun way that we've never seen before, that I would totally rewatch that. But again, I'm Captain America biased. But, you know, in this episode, I just feel like the action doesn't even land that well either. It's just overall, maybe that Nick Fury fight was just fun, maybe even funny to watch. But overall, I can't see myself revisiting this episode. And especially, again, like I said, you know, this does focus on some of the weaker MCU films, and therefore it's rewatching it is just not as compelling. It's like, would you rather see a different spin on the Guardians of the Galaxy films, or would you rather see a different spin on Iron Man 2? It's, yeah. But overall, again, you know, it's just my opinion. This is just my 2 cents on the episode, just what I think. I want to hear what you think in the comments. I want you to like and subscribe. Ring the bell notification icon so that way you can hear about my videos, because as you can see, I'm posting regularly now. But yeah, overall, thanks again for watching and for coming this far in this video. I know my videos are just progressively getting longer, but yeah, thank you. Bye.